One day, Kashiwata and Oda stare at each other over a game of Old Maid. One stare is blank, while the other burns with determination. Some of their classmates grow curious and start to watch. It turns out Oda was the one who challenged Kashiwata to the game, hoping to finally prove that he can hide his expressions and not wear his heart on his sleeve. Oda slightly pushes one card forward above the others, hoping that Kashiwata will take it. Kashiwata notices that Oda is trying to bait her into picking that card, but she instead chooses another and secures the win. No one is surprised that Oda lost, since his expressions were a huge giveaway throughout the game. Frustrated, Oda challenges Kashiwata to another round of Old Maid, claiming that the earlier match was merely a warm-up, and that the next one will be the real deal. He manages to get Kashiwata to play again. Smiling confidently, he pushes the Joker card forward so it stands out a little more. This time, he believes his strategy is foolproof. Instead of trying to hide his expressions, he'll express exactly what he's feeling to confuse her instead. However, the results remain the same. Kashiwata wins again without so much as a twitch. Despite his classmates telling him to give up, Oda stubbornly refuses and challenges Kashiwata to yet another game, proudly declaring that this time he'll be the victor since he can now read her mind. Kashiwata accepts the challenge, shuffles the deck, and deals the cards, all with her usual blank expression. Glancing briefly at his own hand, Oda shifts his focus to her, studying her breathing, her expression, and any tiny movement that might give her away. But he sees nothing. Still, he feels confident that her expression will change when she either draws the Joker or when he touches it from her hand. Carefully, he picks a card and looks at her face. To his dismay, he can't read a single thing from her expression, and when he finally looks at the card, it turns out to be the Joker. He glances back at Kashiwata, but her expression hasn't even shifted to one of triumph. Oda stares at her more intently, convinced that she must be gazing into another dimension that allows her to win every time. He leans closer, staring deeply into her eyes. Oda notices she's drawn the Joker and cheers, only to feel confused when he sees her trembling slightly. He assumes she's shaking with laughter and grows frustrated, wondering why she's amused instead of dismayed. Angrily, he accuses her of mocking him. In the end, Kashiwata is declared the overall winner. Another new day starts at school, and Kashiwata calmly walks through the halls when a toy spider suddenly drops right in front of her. She claims she was surprised, but her expression remains completely neutral. Oda reels the toy spider back, frustrated that his plan to startle Kashiwata didn't work. He tries several more times throughout the day to get a reaction from her, but nothing seems to work. During their break, Oda complains about his failed attempts to Tadakoro and Sada. Both his friends try to talk him out of bothering Kashiwata, but they end up listening to Oda explain his reason for wanting to startle her. His story takes them all the way back to the opening ceremony during spring. As he walked toward the school gate that day, Oda was busy fending off a crow. Just when he thought he'd gotten rid of it, the crow pooped on his shoulder before flying away. That was when he noticed Kashiwata nearby, who, unfortunately, also got hit by the crow. In fact, she had it worse than he did, since the droppings landed right on her head, while his were only on his uniform. Oda found it strange that Kashiwata didn't seem to care about what happened. He followed her into the school and later discovered that they were classmates. From that day on, he became curious about what could elicit more expressions from her, which led to his ongoing mission to get her to react. His friends give him worried looks after hearing his explanation, and Sada warns him not to overdo it with Kashiwata. Finally, lunchtime arrives and Kashiwata gracefully unpacks her meal. She takes a generous sip of her drink when Oda suddenly declares with a proud grin that he swapped out her green tea with vinegar and that she must be suffering right now. When he looks at her, however, her face remains perfectly neutral. Oda begins to doubt himself, wondering if he made a mistake or if she's just good at hiding her suffering. To check, he takes a sip from his own bottle of green tea, only to be met with a sour taste of vinegar. Horrified, he spits it out immediately. Kashiwata makes a small sound and visibly begins to shake, though her face stays blank as ever. Oda accuses her of laughing, and Kashiwata calmly explains that she noticed him smirking earlier when she got her drink. So when he wasn't looking, she secretly switched their bottles. Meanwhile, Oda's friends watch their exchange, realizing that Oda is actually the one being teased, and that Kashiwata knows how much power she has over him. Suddenly, Kashiwata grabs Oda's sleeve and quietly admits that she likes him. Oda immediately turns bright red and faces away from her, muttering aloud that she doesn't mean it in a romantic sense. However, Kashiwata calmly clarifies that she does mean it romantically. Thinking she's mocking him, Oda quickly steps back. His reaction makes Kashiwata sad, though her face fails to show it properly. She asks if he dislikes her, and he stammers that he does because she's so expressionless, and it creeps him out. Kashiwata slowly moves closer, causing Oda to grow increasingly nervous and avoid her gaze. Still, Kashiwata keeps looking directly at his face. When she finally straightens up, she tells him that she's relieved because his true feelings are always written all over his face. Oda's nervousness shifts into embarrassed anger as he continues to call Kashiwata creepy, vowing that one day he'll be the one to scare her. Kashiwata quietly returns to her seat. Oda's friends, who had been watching nearby, notice a small smile form on her lips. They wonder if she's happy, but since she's facing away from Oda, he doesn't see that she finally showed a little emotion. Another day during lunch, Oda gathers his friends for a strategy meeting on how to take down Kashiwata. His friends refuse to be part of any of his plans, but Oda insists that he'll just observe her for now. His friends question why he even called them over if he already has a plan of action. Ignoring their concerns, Oda explains that he's certain Kashiwata will eventually break her stone-faced expression, and all he has to do is keep watch until it happens. Sada decides to lend a hand, saying he's also curious about Kashiwata. He teases Oda, saying that Oda seems to be the most curious about her, and that, as a good friend, he should help him out. Tadokoro joins in the teasing, which only makes Oda more flustered. The next day, Kashiwata is the first to arrive in class. The boys stalk her from the doorway, surprised that she's there so early. As they watch, she pulls out one of her textbooks and starts to read. Sada notices that it's normal behavior, but Oda urges him to look closer. The boys notice her softly humming to herself, her head swaying from side to side. Oda believes this is something she only does when she's sure no one else is around. Sensing a presence behind her, Kashiwata turns toward the door, but the boys quickly duck out of sight. She returns from her book, and the boys quietly sigh in relief that they weren't caught. As the day progresses, Oda keeps a keen eye on Kashiwata, which causes him to be called out by the teacher several times for either not following instructions or accidentally causing minor incidents. During lunch, the three boys even push their tables together to surround Kashiwata. However, she remains completely expressionless throughout the meal, making Ota increasingly frustrated. Sada pulls out his notes and points out that he noticed she looks slightly flushed during lunch and that she blinks 15 times per minute. Tadokoro is shocked at how dedicated his friends are to observing her and nervously reminds them that they still have cleaning duties and suggests they can continue observing her then. They soon learn that Kashiwata will be cleaning the pool with several other students. At the pool area, Kashiwata diligently scrubs the floor of the pool while the students around her complain about the tedious work. Oda and his friends quietly approach and stop by the fence to watch. Suddenly, one of the students shouts that there's a raccoon nearby. Eager for a distraction, the others drop their cleaning tools and rush toward where the raccoon was supposedly spotted, but Kashiwata stays behind, continuing her assigned task. Oda and his friends watch her, impressed by her focus. However, the truth is that Kashiwata is also curious about the raccoon, but she's just too shy to admit it. While Oda's eyes remain trained on her, Sada notes that Kashiwata usually spends most of her time alone at school. After a short pause, Oda steps out into the open, wearing a mischievous grin, and announces that he'll reward her for working so hard. He aims the hose at her and tries to spray her with water, but Kashiwata skillfully dodges. Oda is furious and confused by how she managed to avoid it so easily. In his frustration, Oda accidentally sprays himself instead, soaking his clothes. He immediately blames her and tries to spray her again, but she dodges once more. Suddenly, another stream of water hits him from behind. He turns to see Sada and Tadokoro armed with water guns, grinning mischievously. Tadokoro even offers one to Kashiwata, much to Oda's dismay. The playful chaos quickly spreads, and soon they're all splashing water at each other with hoses and water guns, though Oda keeps insisting he's still mad. Sada manages to hit Oda square in the face with a well-aimed shot, distracting him from targeting Kashiwata for a brief moment. Kashiwata watches them silently and suddenly runs toward them, joining in on the fun. At one point, Kashiwata gets hit with water by Oda, but Oda is quickly sprayed by all three of them. They continue to have fun splashing each other, though most of the attacks end up targeting Ota. Eventually, he collapses from exhaustion and realizes they've all gained up on him. He jumps back to his feet and chases after them as they tease him about how easy of a target he is. While making his rounds, teacher Onuwarada hears the commotion and bursts into the pool area. He catches Kashiwata, Ota, and the others playing with water guns and immediately scolds them for fooling around during cleaning time. The group tries to run away, but Onuwarada manages to grab Tadokoro by the collar. Soon after, all four of them are kneeling in front of him as he lectures them for running on the pool floor. As punishment, the four are made to clean the pool again, even though Oda and his friends weren't assigned to that area in the first place. Oda grumbles about the situation, while Kashiwata quietly walks up to him and thanks him. Oda's face turns bright red as he tries to hide his expression, but Kashiwata moves closer to get a better look, causing him to flinch and run away from her. Sada and Tadokoro watch from the side, once again noticing the faint smile forming on Kashiwata's face. Meanwhile, the other students are still off somewhere searching for the raccoon. One day, Oda challenges Kashiwata to guess which of his hands holds a piece of candy. Kashiwata touches both hands, studying his expression, and quickly figures it out. When she tries to pry it open, Oda stubbornly keeps it shut. During their swimming PE class, Oda impresses everyone with how fast he can swim. Even the teacher compliments him. After finishing the boys' relay, the teacher calls for the girls to take their places, and Oda's eyes immediately land on Kashiwata. As the boys talk among themselves, Oda confidently says that Kashiwata probably can't swim. However, Sada points out that she might actually be good at it since she looks so calm, even if that's just her usual blank expression. Once the girls start swimming, they realize Kashiwata isn't with the group. Her face is down and it looks like she is drowned. The teacher rushes over and manages to lift her, only to find that Kashiwata's face remains completely calm. She explains that she wasn't drowning but swimming, though the teacher clearly doesn't believe her. The teacher approaches Oda, asking him to teach Kashiwata how to swim while he supervises the rest of the class. Oda looks displeased, but the teacher insists so that Kashiwata can join the relay later. Back in the water, Kashiwata quietly thanks Oda for agreeing to teach her, but Oda begins walking away, refusing to do it. Sada offers to take over instead, and Oda instantly returns, insisting that he's the only one qualified to teach her. He starts off by teaching her how to kick to move forward. At first, it seems like he's genuinely teaching her, easing his friend's doubts. However, Oda begins to smirk because he's planning to let her go so she'll panic. After waiting for the right time, Oda releases his hold. Kashiwata's face remains blank, but her body starts flailing wildly because she's actually drowning. In a panic, she grabs onto Oda's torso to keep herself from sinking, but Oda struggles to break free. In the chaos, she accidentally clings to his swimming shorts instead. Tadokoro watches from the side with a worried expression, muttering that he cannot comprehend what they are doing anymore. When Oda climbs out of the pool, Tadokoro notices his swim shorts have been stretched out. Oda swears revenge for the humiliation, but before he can say more, Sada points out that Kashiwata is up next for the girls' relay. Oda stops to look at her, and to everyone's surprise, Kashiwata actually swims, though her form is awkward. Oda's friends tease him because he seems a little proud of her, which he quickly denies. He leaves to fix his swim trunks, but before he can, people begin shouting in alarm. Turning back, he sees commotion in the water and immediately dives in to save Kashiwata. When they resurface, he checks if she's alright, but Tadokoro nervously points out that Oda's swimwear is floating away. The girls scream and Oda curses Kashiwata for putting him in yet another humiliating situation. The next day, Oda tells Kashiwata that he's prepared a present for her. He drops a grasshopper on her desk. To his annoyance, she remains expressionless, though in truth, she's terrified of insects. He tries again with the pop-up toy, but even when she's startled, her face stays blank. Finally, Oda puts on a mask to scare her, but instead of screaming, Kashiwata begins to tremble in silent laughter while still maintaining her stoic expression. Before he can try anything else, Tabuchi calls him outside. She sternly tells him to stop bothering Kashiwata, saying his actions are bordering on bullying. Oda insists that she's misunderstanding the situation. Tabuchi demands an explanation, and Sada blurts out that Oda only bothers Kashiwata because he likes her. Embarrassed, Oda shakes Sada and loudly denies it, but Tabuchi remains unconvinced. She warns him that if Kashiwata ever stops coming to school, it will be his fault. Sada advises him to tone down his antics, and Tadokoro agrees, noting that Tabuchi can be terrifying. As they discuss how serious and uptight Tabuchi is, Oda grows increasingly annoyed that someone is watching his every move. He spots Kashiwata leaving the classroom and tries to bother her, only for Tabuchi to grab him by the shoulder, reminding him coldly that she's always watching. Later in class, the group notices something unusual since Tabuchi seems to be watching Kashiwata instead of Oda. When Oda calls her out on it while she was stalking her, he reasons that she must be curious about Kashiwata too because she's weird. Tabuchi denies it, claiming she's only looking out for her because Oda won't stop pestering her. Oda looks at her unconvinced and accuses her of hiding something, which quickly escalates into an argument between the two. Sada adds his own observation and asks why Tabuchi has been following Kashiwata around. Almost shyly, Tabuchi admits that she's a fan of Kashiwata. She explains that she feels happy whenever Kashiwata slips up and shows even the slightest bit of emotion. However, she complains that Oda keeps blocking her view whenever he tries to bother Kashiwata. With full seriousness, she declares that as the president of the Kashiwata fan club, Oda must ask for her permission before interacting with Kashiwata. Oda stares at her in disbelief, convinced she's some kind of psycho. They begin to argue about the so-called fan club until Tabuchi proudly claims that she can actually read Kashiwata's expressions. Oda is shocked, and Tabuchi smugly adds that she reached that level only after spending countless hours observing her idol, something Oda could never match. Later, Sada enters a nearby room and finds Kashiwata hiding a small gap. Tabuchi immediately appears, offering a hand to help her up while assuring her there's no need to be afraid, even though Kashiwata was never afraid to begin with. Back in the hall, Tabuchi resumes her quarrel with Oda, claiming that Kashiwata's soul is silently crying out in frustration because of his constant harassment. Kashiwata calmly asks if Tabuchi is really her fan. Tabuchi freezes, embarrassed at being found out. Flustered, she insists that she's just an admirer and not some creepy stalker. Oda teases that Kashiwata probably thinks she's a total creep now that the secret's out, leaving Tabuchi visibly crushed. But then Kashiwata approaches her and softly says that she finds Tabuchi an interesting person, and that she'd like it if they could be friends instead. In an instant, Tabuchi's mood soars. She hugs Kashiwata tightly and, with a victorious grin, declares that she now holds the title of being Kashiwata's friend, while Oda is nothing more than an insect. As the two of them argue, Kashiwata suddenly admits she doesn't really want to be Oda's friend. She doesn't finish her sentence, however, and her expression turns faintly shy, leaving both Oda and Tabuchi puzzled about what she meant. Oda's friends quietly note that the two rivals might actually be more alike than they realize. One day during lunch, the cafeteria announces that yakisoba bread is available, and every boy rushes to the counter. Oda manages to snag one first and eats happily, while Tadokoro watches in envy, amazed by how fast Oda always gets what he wants. Sada notes that he's never seen Oda bring a lunchbox before and wonders aloud if his parents ever made him one. Kashiwata overhears their conversation as she quietly observes her own lunchbox. The next day, even before their class is dismissed for lunch break, Oda dashes out of the room to make sure he's first in line at the cafeteria. But as he rounds the corner, he finds Kashiwata standing in front of him. He recalls that she had asked to go to the restroom earlier and quickly realizes she might have planned this. He tries to move past her, but Kashiwata shifts her position, blocking his way every time. Soon the other students rush past them, making Oda miss out on all the good bread. He ends up with something he doesn't even like. He convinces himself that Kashiwata did this as payback for all the times he had annoyed her, and he vows to get even. The next day, as soon as the lunch bell rings, Oda bolts from his seat again. But once more, Kashiwata is waiting in the hallway. He smirks confidently, declaring that she won't stop him this time. Kashiwata looks a little shy, then glances around as if searching for something. The gesture confuses Oda until she suddenly holds out a lunchbox. She tells him that he can have it if he wants, admitting that she had made one for him the day before but was too nervous to hand it over. As students begin to rush past them again, Oda grows flustered. Stubbornly, he insists he doesn't want it anyway, saying it probably doesn't taste good. Tadokoro immediately asks if he can have it instead. This makes Oda snatch the lunchbox and declare that it's his. When he finally opens it, he's disappointed to find only apple slices. He complains, wishing he'd just bought bread. Still, Kashiwata quietly smiles to herself. Later that week, Oda comes up with another scheme to make Kashiwata show emotion. He plans to throw a paper airplane at her right when a jack-in-the-box pops out, hoping to catch her off guard from both directions. When Kashiwata opens the toy, she immediately turns to Oda, ruining his timing. The paper airplane falls short and lands on the floor, only to be stepped on by Tabuchi, who walks over to gently brush Kashiwata's hair. As Oda trudges back to his seat, he notices two colorful hair ties left on a nearby desk. His friends comment on how pretty and probably expensive they look. Oda, however, just smirks, already plotting how to use them to spook Kashiwata. Oda walks to the window holding one of the hair ties and teases that he's going to throw it out. To everyone's surprise, a strong gust of wind suddenly blows it right out of his hand. Tabuchi immediately snaps at him to go get it back, but Oda protests that it's impossible to retrieve. Before their argument can continue, they notice that Kashiwata looks unusually downcast. When she removes her hands, there are tears brimming in her eyes. Oda is frozen. He can't believe that he's actually seeing her cry. A moment later, Kashiwata leaves the classroom. Sada quietly suggests that the hair tie might have meant something special to her. Tabuchi then shares that Kashiwata once told her those hair ties were a gift from her grandmother. Without a word, Oda bolts out of the room. When Kashiwata later returns, the boys ask if she's seen him, but she shakes her head. Tabuchi scowls, muttering that he probably went on a spiritual journey to purify his heart, while Sada simply guesses he felt awkward and went home. By the time school ends, the light wind has turned into a raging storm. Sada and Tadokoro head out only to spot Oda out in the rain, soaked and searching for something. When they confront him, he stubbornly denies looking for the hair tie, but his friends see right through him. Without hesitation, Sada offers to help, and soon all three are combing the school grounds, battling wind and rain as they search. The longer it goes on, the guiltier Oda feels for losing something precious to Kashiwata. Just as he's about to give up, Tadokoro shouts that he's found it. They rush over, and Sada explains that it had fallen near the front gate and ended up in the lost and found box. He hands the muddy hair tie to Oda, who immediately makes his way to Kashiwata's house. When Kashiwata opens the door, Oda, drenched from the storm, awkwardly holds out the hair tie along with a new one he bought to make up for its condition. Suddenly, Kashiwata's grandmother appears from inside the house. Oda freezes in shock since he assumed she had passed away based on Kashiwata's reaction to losing the accessory. The grandmother, unfazed, tells him to wait and disappears to get towels so he can dry off. Oda demands to know why Kashiwata was crying if her grandmother is still alive. Calmly, Kashiwata replies that she just got dirt in her eyes. Furious at the misunderstanding, Oda mutters something about it being all Tabuchi's fault, but when Kashiwata smiles faintly and promises to treasure the hair tie, he turns bright red and runs off in embarrassment, ignoring Kashiwata's invitation to dry off inside. Meanwhile, elsewhere on campus, Tabuchi is also searching through the rain for the lost hair tie. Oda suddenly asks for Kashiwata's Lime ID, and she adds him as a friend. Tadokoro teases him about it, but Oda insists it's for a competition. He explains that he and Kashiwata will send each other messages during class, and whoever gets caught first loses. Kashiwata quietly agrees to the terms. She is happy since Oda is now on her Lime list. Class begins, and Oda smirks confidently at her from his seat. He types his first message, informing her that she has to take an exam and that the teacher has listed her name on the board. Kashiwata glances up at the board, only to see that there's nothing written there. Meanwhile, Oda is already thinking of his next move. He mutters under his breath, unaware that he said it aloud. The teacher, Aniwarada, immediately calls him out, earning laughter from the entire class. As the lecture continues, Oda sends her a barrage of funny lime stamps, the human-faced potato and crusher Takeda. Kashiwata stares at the images in silence. Oda is shocked that they didn't cause her to smile because those were his best stamps. What he doesn't know is that Kashiwata is actually amused. Oniwarada catches Oda and smacks him on the head, scolding him for not paying attention. Oda's face burns red from embarrassment. Moments later, she receives a scary image from Oda. Her body trembles, but her face remains completely neutral. Oda, misreading the reaction, assumes she's laughing and sends a photo of her edited to make her appear bald. Kashiwata begins to shake, but her face stays calm. Oda frowns since he isn't sure what the shaking means. Then a paper ball hits Oda. When he opens it, it turns out to be a warning from Tabuchi. Annoyed, Oda scribbles a reply and tosses it at her. Tabuchi unfolds it, and her eyes widen when she reads that Oda and Kashiwata have been exchanging messages on Lime. She can't believe Oda managed to get Kashiwata's Lime ID before she did, and she collapses onto her desk. Oda looks at Tabuchi before noticing that Kashiwata is finally responding on Lime. She asks him if he has ever thought of an answer. Oda is confused until he realizes she's referring to her confession. His face reddens and he begins to panic. He suddenly stands up, ready to shout, but Oniwara is already beside him, scolding him for fiddling with his phone. He even remarks that Oda was grinning and accuses him of looking at inappropriate sites. Oda immediately denies it and tries to pin the blame on Kashiwada, but Oniwara refuses to believe him since Kashiwada has been quiet. From Oniwara's perspective, his day begins as he walks toward his homeroom class. When he enters the room, students quickly rush to their seats. He makes his way to his desk and feels a little disheartened that his students still haven't warmed up to him. He looks around at their faces and realizes they all seem eager for the class to end. Still, he can always count on Kashiwada, as she's the only one who treats him without fear or hesitation. Every day, she dutifully attends class and looks him straight in the eyes, showing no hint of fear. He doesn't notice that she's actually on her line map. His attention then shifts to Oda, Kashiwada's polar opposite. He notices Oda mumbling something under his breath, so he calls his attention. As Oda growls in frustration, Oniwara observes him closely, noting how his disheveled appearance perfectly matches his delinquent behavior. When he catches him not paying attention again, he smacks him with a rolled-up notebook. He then notices Kashiwada shaking slightly and assumes she's laughing. The other students soon start laughing as well. Oniwara feels that this might be the key to making his students enjoy his lectures. He just needs to fill his lessons with humor. He quietly thanks Kashiwada for the sudden realization. As the lecture continues, he tries to throw in a few puns. However, when he glances at the class, they all look bored. In fact, the atmosphere feels heavier than before. He turns to Kashiwada for reassurance, but even she looks unusually down. Oniwara turns to Oda, hoping he can help break the ice, but Oda also looks like he's suffering. In a matter of seconds, Tabuchi faints and Oniwara wonders if his sense of humor is hazardous. His eyes then land on Oda, who is once again on his phone. He realizes he can use this moment to make the class lively. Just as Oda stands up, Oniwara is immediately by his side. He accuses Oda of browsing inappropriate sites, but inwardly thanks him for being his savior. He then notices that Oda's face is bright red, which makes him wonder if Oda has feelings for him. So after class, he calls Oka to speak with him. He thanks Oda for rescuing him, but apologizes, stating he cannot reciprocate his feelings, leaving Oda completely confused. One day, Tabuchi decides to challenge Oda to a duel because she's annoyed with his recent behavior. She reminds him that he lost Kashiwada's hair tie, and even though they found it, the trouble could have been avoided. Kashiwada, however, doesn't seem to mind, happily eating her lunch. What annoys Tabuchi most is that people have started comparing her to Ota. To prove that she's nothing like him, she challenges him to a reaction battle. The one who makes an obvious reaction loses. Tabuchi then adds that the loser must promise to stay away from Kashiwada. Kashiwada hears this and becomes sad. Oda easily agrees to the terms, and soon sparks of rivalry begin to ignite between the two. The competition begins, and both Tabuchi and Oda maintain neutral expressions throughout class. Oniwara announces that he will be returning the exam results from last time, and Tabuchi is confident that Oda will freak out when he gets his results. Tabuchi receives her exam and scores a 95, which makes her happy, though she still manages to maintain her poker face. When Oda gets his exam results, Tabuchi keeps her eyes locked on him, but Oda doesn't react. She wonders if he actually did well this time and moves closer to get a glimpse of his score. To her horror, Oda scored a 0. She can't believe he isn't reacting and assumes his body must have shut down from the shock. Oda turns to face her, aware that she's probably confused. In his mind, he's already used to bad scores. By the end of class, Oda waits for his classmates to leave so he can scare Tabuchi. A pair of students are about to exit the room when the merch suddenly dangles in front of them. Before they can get a good look at the words, Tabuchi dashes forward so fast to grab it that they barely register what happened. They convince themselves they must have imagined seeing the strange fan merchandise. Meanwhile, Tabuchi and Oda stare each other down, neither admitting that they're both bringing their A game. The next morning, Oda brings in some hot takoyaki. He tells Tabuchi they should eat them at the same time to see who reacts first. Both immediately pop an entire ball into their mouths and fail to keep straight faces. Oda's friends help themselves to the takoyaki as well, eating carefully, and invite Kashiwada to join them. Kashiwada easily eats one without reacting, while Tabuchi and Oda accuse each other of reacting. Tabuchi glances at Kashiwada, trying to calm herself down, knowing her friend will be proud of her. However, Kashiwada tells Tabuchi that she finds her cuter when she reacts naturally. Tabuchi's facade cracks since she's never been called cute before. Then the boys also start calling her cute, and soon her face turns red from all the compliments. Overwhelmed, she runs out of the room in embarrassment. Oda cheers in victory, but Kashiwada quietly asks if not showing emotion is really a good thing. Oda insists it is because if people can always read what you're thinking, it puts you at a disadvantage. After a thoughtful pause, Kashiwada admits that she actually envies people like Ota because others know what he's feeling. In her case, people hardly take her seriously. She then turns away and runs out of the classroom, leaving Oda confused but blushing. At the school gymnasium, Oda's class is assigned to clean. He notices that Kashiwada isn't with their group, and Tadokoro informs him that she's cleaning the storage room. Seeing an opportunity, Oda rushes to the storage room, determined to spook Kashiwada. Entering the storage room, Oda doesn't see her right away, so he decides to look around. He pulls out a toy rat and wonders where he can place it so she'll notice it. Then he spots some movement in a gap and sees Kashiwada searching for something. When he asks what she's doing, she tells him she saw something scurried by and wanted to get a closer look. Oda assumes it might be a real rat and decides to help her find it. Meanwhile, the coach checks on the class of progress and deems the cleaning good enough for the day. He takes a quick look toward the storage room and decides it's fine to lock it. Tadokoro tries to tell him that Oda and Kashiwata are still inside, but the coach insists there's no one there and locks the door. Inside the storage room, Oda hears the distinct click of the door locking. Kashiwata wonders if they've been locked in, and Oda panics, rushing to check the door. Sure enough, it won't budge. Realizing no one will likely check on them since school ended early after exams, Oda groans in frustration. He glances at Kashiwata, irritated that she seems completely unbothered. Oda looks for another exit and decides that, if it comes down to it, he might have to bust a hole through the wall. As he's thinking, he notices Kashiwata trembling and assumes she's laughing. He mocks her for being so relaxed about everything, but she quietly points out that Oda is panicking. He tries to argue back, claiming he also finds the situation funny, but a loud stomach grumble betrays him. Embarrassed, he denies being hungry. Kashiwata starts trembling again, then pulls out a small candy and offers it to him. Oda refuses at first, saying she should eat it instead, but she surprises him by taking out a few more pieces. Eventually, he gives in, and the two share the candy as the evening drags on. Oda starts to worry that no one will come for them until morning, when suddenly he feels Kashiwata cling to him. He demands to know what she's doing, and she points toward the shelves, saying she saw a ghost. Oda quickly looks in that direction and spots a small lizard. Kashiwata quietly thanks him for coming to look for her, admitting that if no one had checked, she would have been trapped there alone. Oda realizes her shaking earlier wasn't laughter but fear. Trying to cover his concern, he snaps at her, and Kashiwata simply turns away, unbothered. An idea strikes him. Since he now knows she's afraid of ghosts, he decides to use a nearby sheet to scare her. He calls her name dramatically and tries to scare her using the sheet, but trips and falls right on top of her. The door suddenly swings open, revealing Oniwurata and two classmates. They freeze at the sight of Oda on top of Kashiwata. Oniwurata immediately starts scolding him while Oda frantically tries to explain himself. When Kashiwata was younger, her class once played dodgeball. She was hit immediately. A classmate asked if she was angry, but she calmly said she had fun. Still, her classmates couldn't believe her because her expression stayed completely blank. During break, they chatted among themselves, but they felt uneasy because Kashiwata wasn't reacting to their stories. Because of her expressionless face, her classmates slowly started to avoid her. Now things are different. Kashiwata is always approached by Oda, who constantly tries to scare her. He uses a jack-in-the-box in his latest attempt, but when it pops out, he's the one who jumps in fright. Oda notices a faint blush on her cheeks and immediately turns red himself. Tadokoro catches the scene too, teasing Oda for making her blush. Oda denies everything, while Tadokoro teases him for his own red face. None of them notice the tiny smile on Kashiwata's face. One morning, Oda asks Kashiwata to join him in watching a movie on Sunday. His friends are stunned, unable to believe that Oda was bold enough to invite her out on a date. He quickly clarifies that it is not a date and shows them a poster of an upcoming horror film. Since he knows Kashiwata is terrified of ghosts, he believes this will be the perfect opportunity to see her show emotion for once. He points at her, claiming that Sunday will finally be the day he gets her to react. After a moment of thought, Kashiwata agrees to go with him. Tadokoro becomes curious about whether her expression will finally change and briefly considers joining them, though Sada advises against it. When Tabuchi arrives in the classroom, everyone quickly clears from Kashiwata's area. Shortly after, Kashiwata receives a line message from Oda telling her to meet him at Ox Park at 10 in the morning on Sunday. When Sunday arrives, Oda finds Kashiwata sitting by the fountain. Seeing her in casual attire catches him off guard, and he feels his face redden before he can compose himself. Kashiwata stands, suggesting that they head to the theater. Embarrassed by his own reaction, Oda tells her that this is not a date as he turns to face a different direction. Kashiwata lightly grabs his sleeve, which only makes him more flustered as they continue their walk together. At the theater, Oda studies the horror poster with confidence, convinced that this time he will finally get a reaction out of her since the film is said to have several jump scares. Once inside the cinema, they take their seats with no one sitting nearby. Oda gets excited as he quietly reviews his plan to use jelly to surprise her. When the movie begins, Oda is the first to nearly scream. Though he tries to remain composed, each new jump scare makes it harder for him to hide his fear. Kashiwata, on the other hand, remains calm and observes him with quiet curiosity. As Oda tries to get her to look at the screen, a sudden romantic scene plays. His face turns red and he averts his eyes in embarrassment, worried that Kashiwata might misinterpret his reaction. Beside him, Kashiwata begins to shake slightly, not from fear, but from silent amusement. As the movie continues, Oda urges Kashiwata to keep watching, convinced that the next scare will finally make her react. He decides it is the perfect time to use his jelly prank, but when he reaches into his pocket, the jelly is gone. Kashiwata spots the small pack beside her. She calmly picks it up and hands it to him, just as a terrifying image flashes on screen. As the audience exits the theater in cheerful spirits, Oda looks utterly drained. Kashiwata, on the other hand, remarks that the movie was enjoyable and that Oda's reactions made it even more entertaining. Embarrassed by her comment, Oda hides his face, insisting to himself that he simply did not expect such an emotional ending. Kashiwata notices the tears forming in his eyes and quietly offers him tissues, but Oda refuses and storms ahead. She follows him into town, where her attention is caught by a nearby arcade and she points at it. Oda reluctantly joins her and they try their luck at the claw machine. After several failed attempts, Oda finally wins a small rabbit plush. Kashiwata takes it with quiet delight, though her expression remains unchanged. Their outing continues as Kashiwata points toward a cafe known for its parfaits. They step inside and she orders the shop's seasonal special. Watching her eat the towering dessert, Oda realizes that despite her calm demeanor, Kashiwata enjoys the same simple pleasures a normal girl would. On the train ride home, Kashiwata gradually dozes off, her head resting gently on Oda's shoulder. Though flustered, Oda stays still, only growing more embarrassed when nearby passengers comment on how cute they look together. The next morning, Oda's friends immediately ask how the horror movie went and whether Kashiwata was scared. Oda, still mortified from the day before, avoids answering. Sada then claims to have discovered a way to truly surprise Kashiwata. This interests Oda, and Sada tells him that all he needs to do is grab her hand. Though skeptical, Oda decides to try it. When he does, his own face turns scarlet and he quickly lets go, shouting in embarrassment. His friends watch his overreaction while Kashiwata quietly looks down at her hand, a faint but unmistakably shy expression forming on her face. As soon as the bell rings, the boys notice Kashiwata rushing out of the classroom. Oda assumes she must be plotting something odd and suggests they follow her, hoping to catch her doing something he can use as leverage. Though skeptical, his friends decide to tag along, certain that Kashiwata will somehow win whatever unspoken competition Oda has in mind. They trail her across campus until they find her crouched in a quiet corner outside the building. To their surprise, she's holding a small kitten in her hands. Sada immediately notices how attached the kitten seems to her and asks where it came from. Kashiwata explains that she found it abandoned a few days earlier and has been secretly caring for it on campus since her father dislikes cats and wouldn't allow one at home. The kitten begins to meow softly, prompting Kashiwata to bring out a small bottle of milk. Oda notices that it isn't ordinary milk, but formula meant for kittens. They all watch as she gently feeds the small creature, her expression calm and unchanged. Sada quietly remarks that even if her face doesn't show it, she must be happy to see the kitten each day. Oda mutters that he wouldn't be able to tell, though his gaze lingers on Kashiwata and the way she carefully holds the animal. She seems to notice and unexpectedly offers him the kitten, saying he can try petting it. Oda refuses at first, but when she insists, he gives in and reaches out, only for the kitten to hiss and swipe its tiny paw at him. Startled, Oda pulls his hand back as his friends tease that the kitten clearly doesn't like him. Sada then warns Kashiwata that keeping a cat on school grounds isn't safe, especially at night. They suggest finding a proper home. Both Sada and Tadokoro admit they can't adopt the animal, so Kashiwata turns to Oda, asking if he could take it in. Tadokoro tenses, expecting Oda to use the situation to his advantage, but Oda simply declines. Instead, he suggests they all work together to look for someone who can care for it properly. Tadokoro can't help but smile, thinking Oda is a strange person since he would occasionally act out of character. Suddenly, they hear Tabuchi's voice and she appears from the bushes, telling the group to leave everything to her. Oda insults her as she eagerly approaches Kashiwata and the cat. Oda begins typing away on his phone, muttering that he's already working on finding an owner. He proudly shows everyone that he made a social media post about it, confident that it will reach his followers. Tadokoro points out that Oda only has 3 followers, so it won't help much. Sada suggests they all help by asking around for people who might adopt the cat. Tabuchi volunteers to ask people in the school, while Oda says he'll stay where he is so he can focus on attracting more followers to get his post noticed. He then excitedly announces that his post has already been reposted, but quickly becomes disheartened when he learns that it was only Tadokoro who reposted it. The group splits up to ask around, but all of them have a hard time finding someone willing to adopt the cat. Most either aren't interested or already have a pet that might harm the small kitten. They eventually meet back where they started and feel disheartened to learn that no one wants to take the kitten. Just then, Oda's phone pings and he tells the group that someone has shown interest in adopting the cat. The person lives in the next town but will be passing by the school tomorrow to pick it up. As the others compliment Oda for finding an owner, Kashiwata quietly stares at the kitten inside the box. The next day, they meet the woman who wants the cat. She promises to take good care of it. When Kashiwata hands the box over, she has a hard time letting go and begins to shake. After a few seconds, she finally releases the box and the woman walks away with the kitten. The others also begin to head back, but Kashiwata and Oda stay behind, watching the woman disappear into the distance. Oda notices Kashiwata clutching the formula she had bought for the kitten. He pats her head, reassuring her that she'll meet the cat again someday. Kashiwata's eyes begin to tear up, but she agrees with Oda's words. The next day, Kashiwata leaves the classroom as soon as the bell rings. Oda finds it suspicious and decides to follow her, thinking he can find out her weakness. He discovers that Kashiwata had rushed all the way to the woman's home just to visit the cat. Tabuchi greets Kashiwata with a happy birthday and reveals that she bought her a gift. She hands it to Kashiwata, who is genuinely surprised, even if her expression doesn't show it. Tabuchi proudly reveals that she bought the gift in secret, hoping to surprise Kashiwata. As Kashiwata unwraps the present, Oda approaches and wonders aloud if it really is her birthday. He asks how Tabuchi knew, and Tabuchi replies that it's only natural since they are friends. Inside the wrapping, Kashiwata finds an assortment of cat-themed items, which she lays out on her desk. She remarks that they're all cute, and Oda notices a large pile of message cards, teasing Tabuchi about them. He comments that Kashiwata probably thinks she's a creep, but Tabuchi insists that her actions aren't creepy at all and turns to see Kashiwata's response to her gift. Kashiwata gently picks up a small cat charm, fiddling with it before thanking Tabuchi, adding Chan to her name. Tabuchi notices the suffix and is delighted, realizing that it means Kashiwata sees her as a close friend. Soon, Oda's friends join in to greet Kashiwata a happy birthday. Oda's friends encourage him to greet Kashiwata, but he refuses, claiming there's no point in greeting her. Tadokoro insists that she probably wants to hear it from him the most. Kashiwata's eyes turn toward Oda, silently waiting. Under pressure, he tries to speak but stumbles over his words, then blurts out that she should have a rotten birthday and even insults her. Everyone freezes. His friends and Tabuchi immediately scold him, calling what he said out of line, especially on her birthday. Tabuchi warns him to apologize and greet her before class ends, but Oda brushes it off and storms out. The others look disappointed, except for Kashiwata, who only watches quietly as he leaves. By sunset, while walking home, Oda's friends are disappointed in him since he never wished Kashiwata a happy birthday, especially after insulting her. Oda mentions that Kashiwata was oddly following him around the entire day, and Tadokoro explains that it's because she was expecting him to greet her. Oda refuses to acknowledge his mistake and stubbornly heads home. By the time he reaches home, Oda feels incredibly guilty, so he sends her several funny lime stamps. Kashiwata notices her phone chime and sees the messages. She feels her heart flutter as she types out a reply. Oda sees her cheerful response and becomes excited. His parents notice how happy he looks and assume he's messaging a girl. Kashiwata eagerly waits for another reply, but Oda is still thinking of what to say. She leaves her phone when her mother calls her for dinner and cake. Her phone chimes with several new messages from Oda, which include a greeting and some photos of cats, but she doesn't see them. Oda anxiously waits for a reply as his parents observe him from the table, amused that their son is very obvious. One morning, Sada introduces himself to the viewers, clarifying that although his name sounds like Sada, it is actually Sada. He adds that people often comment on how his eyes appear lifeless. Regardless of the situation, he finds it difficult to relate to his friends or other people, and this is evident in his general lack of enthusiasm. That same day, he receives a confession from a girl he does not know. He cannot even recall ever speaking to her, and he admits that he does not understand romance very well. After leaving the girl, Sada heads to the classroom, where he notices Oda bothering Kashiwata once again. He quietly admits that he genuinely enjoys watching the two of them interact. When the teacher announces that he will be distributing test scores, Oda, unsurprisingly, receives a 0. Sada observes that Oda's thoughts are always transparent due to his expressive face. In contrast, Kashiwata remains expressionless regardless of her results. When Oda asks about her score, she admits that she received a 40. Oda assumes she is looking down on him, though in truth, she is quietly disappointed with her performance. Later, Oda attempts to startle her with a toy snake, but to his surprise, Kashiwata grabs it by the tail and turns the tables by frightening him instead. From his seat, Sada observes with mild astonishment that she actually resisted. He reflects that watching them and trying to predict their next actions is entertaining. If he were to describe their relationship, he would find it difficult to assign it a label, but he senses that the two share a mutual attraction. The following day, Sada notices Kashiwata staring out the hallway window and thinks she looks somewhat dejected. Suddenly, Oda calls out to her and she immediately runs away upon noticing him. The same occurs repeatedly throughout the day as Kashiwata continues to avoid Oda. Oda grows frustrated with being ignored and Tadokoro teases him. Sada, however, senses that something must have happened to cause such a change. He decides to approach Kashiwata privately and asks if something is wrong. Kashiwata hesitantly confesses that she tried to cut her own bangs and that the result turned out odd. Sada suppresses a chuckle and tells her that he's sure Oda wouldn't even notice, since her bangs don't look much different from usual. He observes how she keeps touching her bangs and concludes that caring so much about small details usually means wanting to look good for someone you like. Sada reassures her again that her bangs look fine, even offering a rare kind smile to help her relax. Just then, Oda accidentally makes a sound, alerting them to his presence. When he tries to sneak away, Sada stops him and tells him not to get the wrong idea. He turns to Kashiwata and asks if it's okay to tell Oda the real reason she's been avoiding him. After hearing the explanation, Oda calls Kashiwata stupid for worrying so much about her bangs. He then offers to fix them for her, shocking everyone. Pulling out his scissors, he confidently insists it'll be easy. To everyone's surprise, Kashiwata agrees and lets him start trimming. However, as Oda snips away, he quickly realizes he's made a mistake and makes it worse trying to even things out. By the time he's finished, her bangs are noticeably shorter than before. Oda forces a smile and insists they look good, but Kashiwata bluntly tells him that his face says otherwise. Embarrassed, Oda hides his expression and starts suggesting different hairstyles to make her bangs look better, and Tadokoro bursts out laughing at how it all turned out. Kashiwata remains expressionless, but it's clear she's furious about her new bangs. Watching the scene, Sada quietly concludes that she probably doesn't like Ota. The next day, Oniwara announces that spring break will begin tomorrow. He reminds the class to finish their homework, even calling out Ota by name, knowing full well he won't do it. After class, Ota fumes about being singled out while his friends coax him to walk home with them. Sada teases him, asking if he'll be lonely without seeing Kashiwata. Ota stubbornly denies it, claiming it's actually a relief, but his eyes still follow her as she leaves. Tadokoro starts laughing hysterically, saying that Ota's face completely gave away his true feelings. Ota tells him to shut up, but suddenly jumps when Kashiwata appears behind him. He scolds her for startling him, insisting that he just saw her outside. Kashiwata reminds him about the upcoming Christmas party, and Tadokoro recalls that their class is holding one tomorrow. Sada notes that attendance is voluntary, while Ota immediately declares that he has no intention of joining since it's just going to be a gift exchange and eating too many sweets. He adds that he doesn't see the point of celebrating Christmas because he finds it stupid. Kashiwata stares at him in silence for so long that he eventually shifts his attention back to her. She quietly asks if he could attend the party. After a long pause, Ota finally mutters a reluctant okay, and Tadokoro immediately bursts out laughing at how soft his response was. Kashiwata, meanwhile, is inwardly happy that she managed to convince him. Later that day, back at his apartment, Ota sulks about needing to bring a gift for the exchange until he realizes this might be the perfect opportunity to mess with Kashiwata by giving her something weird. Just then, a strong, foul odor fills the air. His sister walks in holding a canned fish, explaining that she bought it because it seemed interesting. Ota complains about her strange shopping habits, saying that the fact it stinks even when unopened is proof enough that trying it is a terrible idea. She ignores him and walks away, but Ota suddenly realizes what to get Kashiwata. The next day, Tadokoro spots Ota arriving at the venue. Tadokoro admits that he decided to come since the party actually seemed fun. He also reveals that he didn't buy anything new for the exchange and just brought something from home that he didn't need anymore. They soon notice Kashiwata looking around the venue. When she spots them, she approaches, clutching her present close to her chest. Ota immediately asks what she brought, but she refuses to tell him. He tries to guess but can't figure it out, mostly because he's too focused on her face instead of the gift. Ota then proudly says that he brought a really festive present, and Tadokoro turns pale when he sees the suspiciously wrapped package, already certain it'll be a nightmare for whoever receives it. The much-awaited gift exchange is about to begin, and Naobuchi steps forward to announce it. She points out that the huge box on the side is from Onuwarada and meant for the entire class, adding that they were instructed to open it last. What no one knows is that Onuwarada is actually inside that box, dressed in a Santa costume. He believes that popping out as a present will make everyone laugh and help him shed his reputation as the strict, intimidating teacher. As the party continues, Tadokoro leans toward Ota and says he knows Ota's planning to prank Kashiwata, but asks how he's going to make sure his gift ends up in her hands. Ota looks confused until Yabuchi announces that all presents will be collected and shuffled randomly. Realizing there's no guarantee Kashiwata will receive his gift, Ota panics. He complains that no one told him about this rule, and Tadokoro explains that it's the normal way gift exchanges work. Just then, Tadokoro notices Kashiwata shivering and asks if she's cold, but the truth is she's simply startled by how the gift exchange is done. Meanwhile, Ota starts frantically brainstorming ways to rig the results until he notices something dripping from his bag. A strong, fishy smell quickly spreads throughout the room. Everyone starts gagging and looking around in confusion, wondering where the stench is coming from. The class starts complaining at him in disbelief as the smell grows unbearable. Yabushi finally orders everyone to step outside for fresh air, and the students rush out, blaming Ota for ruining the party. Kashiwata also leaves but glances back at the venue, a worried look flickering across her face. Inside, Ota scrambles to look for the can of fish, finally finding the leaking can and wrapping it tightly in layers of tape and a plastic bag. While he's doing this, Kashiwata approaches him. Startled, Ota hides the gift behind his back, but Kashiwata simply holds out a neatly wrapped present toward him. She tells him it's her Christmas present for him. Ota freezes, completely taken aback that she prepared something just for him. When he unwraps it, he finds a green scarf inside. Kashiwata explains softly that she wanted that specific gift to go to him. Feeling awkward and pressured to give something in return, Ota hurriedly pulls out his old gloves and hands them to her. Kashiwata assumes they're a gift he chose and slips them on, commenting that the looseness gives them a certain charm. Late that night, Onuwarada finally lifts the lid of the box, only to find the venue completely empty. He never realized everyone had already evacuated. During New Year's, Ota is playing games while his sister sorts through the family's New Year's cards. One catches her eye since it's addressed to Ota. She points out the cute drawings and guesses that the sender must be a girl. When she reads the name Kashiwata, Ota instantly turns red. He rushes over to snatch the letter, but his sister teases him by holding it out of reach. She laughs, asking if Kashiwata is the girl he likes, and starts reading the card. She notes that it even sounds like a confession, but when Ota finally manages to grab it, he realizes it's just a simple New Year's greeting. He scolds his sister for making fun of him. He remembers that Kashiwata once asked for his address, and he figures she simply wanted to send him a greeting. Still, he feels a little guilty for not sending one back. Looking over his shoulder, his sister asks if Kashiwata is the same girl he's been chatting with online. Ota snaps back, demanding how she knew, but then realizes he just admitted it himself. His sister laughs, claiming she's just being a good older sister. She invites him to join her for the shrine visit, but he refuses. As she threatens to tell their father about the letter, Ota immediately changes his mind and agrees to come along. At the shrine, after making their prayers, his sister smiles, happy that he finally decided to join her. As they walk away, Sada spots them and greets Ota. After introductions, Sada casually mentions the canned fish incident, though Ota's sister only looks at them, confused. Then they notice Kashiwata nearby. Ota can't believe the coincidence. His sister catches him staring and asks what's so interesting about her. Ota replies that it's just strange how Kashiwata always looks so emotionless. His sister, however, finds her doll-like expression and features adorable. Ota disagrees, prompting his sister to smirk knowingly at him. He tries to hurry them home, but then spots Kashiwata drawing a fortune. He wonders if she's happy, while Sada teases that Oda always watches Kashiwata closely. Flustered, Oda covers his eyes so no one can tell where he's looking. Trying to save face, Oda insists he doesn't even know Kashiwata, but at that exact moment, she waves at him. He tries to ignore her, but she runs over and touches the scarf she gave him, clearly happy that he's using it. Panicking, Oda pretends not to know her and claims it was a gift from a stranger. Sada sighs, saying Oda's lies are getting ridiculous. Amused, Oda's sister wraps her arms around him, pretending to be his girlfriend. Kashiwata watches with her usual blank expression, but then Oda's sister grabs her, saying she wants to experiment to see what kind of expressions she can make. Oda is horrified, while Sada notes how quickly his sister changes targets. Oda's sister drags Kashiwata toward their apartment, but Kashiwata gets a call from her parents and has to leave. Before parting, Oda's sister cheerfully tells Oda to invite Kashiwata over next time so she can continue her experiments. Tadokoro laments his terrible luck. Because of the new seat assignments, he's now sitting between Oda and Kashiwata, and he can't believe how unlucky he is. He wonders why Oda keeps glaring at Kashiwata all the time. Since Tadokoro is seated in front of Oda, he can practically feel the intensity of his glare on his back and starts to worry that Oda might actually be glaring at him instead, annoyed that Tadokoro's in the way. Meanwhile, he notices Kashiwata occasionally looking behind her and silently pleads for her to face forward. Her expression gives him no clues about what she's thinking. Then he feels another sharp glare from the side, this time from Tabuchi, who's also glaring at Oda. Caught in the middle of all this silent tension, Tadokoro feels like he's stuck in a three-way standoff straight out of a cowboy movie. Worst part is, since he's there, he might get hit by the crossfire. His eyes wander to the far corner of the room, where Sada is quietly smiling, completely unbothered. Tadokoro envies him. It looks like Sada is in his own peaceful little world. When Sada mounts a playful, "hang in there," Tadokoro feels utterly betrayed for having the worst seat in class. Exhausted from the intense atmosphere, Tadokoro finally asks Oda if he wants to trade seats, stating that it'll be easier for Oda to be closer to Kashiwata, but Oda misinterprets the offer, assuming Tadokoro is only suggesting it because he believes Oda likes Kashiwata. He realizes he misworded his request. Since that plan fails, Tadokoro tries asking Kashiwata to swap instead, but she politely refuses. During break, Tadokoro's stomach sinks when he overhears Oda telling Kashiwata to have another contest with him. This time, Oda proposes they pass notes next period with doodles, and whoever makes the other laugh first wins. To Tadokoro's horror, Oda adds that he'll be the one delivering their drawings. Tadokoro isn't even surprised anymore since he already expected to be included, being conveniently in the middle of them. He sighs and agrees, but only if they promise he won't get into trouble. Oda reassures him that it'll be fine, but also whispers that Tabuchi mustn't find out. Tadokoro can't believe that Oda's basically asking him to perform a miracle. As Japanese class begins, Oda passes his first drawing to Tadokoro. Curious, Tadokoro takes a peek and instantly regrets it. The strange creature barely resembles a giraffe. Its legs are too short since Oda failed to consider how much drawing space he has, its body is misshapen, and its face looks utterly pitiful. Tadokoro concludes that Oda doesn't have a single artistic bone in his body. He's still staring in disbelief when Tabuchi glances his way. He then passes the drawing over to Kashiwata and silently prays that her response will be something normal. No one notices Kashiwata trembling from trying to hold in her laughter. She picks up her pen and draws, quickly sending the drawing to Tadokoro. He panics when he sees that Kashiwata had drawn a slightly smaller giraffe beside Oda's, perfectly matching his style. Oniwara immediately pauses his lecture to question him, but lets him off with a warning. Still rattled, Tadokoro passes the paper to Oda. Oda takes one look and starts stifling his laughter. Tadokoro can't help joining in, which immediately gets them both called out by Oniwara. He asks if they find the class funny. Tadokoro panics and blurts out a denial while Oda calmly starts doodling again. When Oda sends the paper back, Tadokoro tells him that continuing is a bad idea. But when he steals a peek at the drawing, he nearly bursts out laughing since it's now labeled Tabuchi, and the resemblance is obvious. Unfortunately, Tabuchi notices and glares at him, feeling insulted. He tries to clear his name, but Tabuchi pinches his arm in annoyance. Oniwara, seeing the commotion, reprimands Tadokoro once again for disturbing the class. Just then, Kashiwata passes him another paper. Tadokoro glances at it and freezes. It's a doodle poking fun at Oniwara himself, and as fate would have it, Oniwara is standing right beside him when he sees it. Kashiwata sits with an innocent face while Tadokoro and Oda are promptly ordered to bring the drawing to the faculty room. Later, as they leave the staff room, Oniwara remains at his desk, staring long and hard at the caricature of himself. He wonders if maybe his students would be more comfortable around him if he acted a little more like the drawing. One snowy afternoon, Oda walks home with his usual group. Tadokoro complains about how cold it is, while Oda shares that he spent most of his winter break either playing games or thinking of ways to destroy Kashiwata. Sada notes that spending his time on those things perfectly explains why Oniwara was so upset with Oda's winter break homework. As they continue walking, Sada spots Kashiwata off to the side, building what appears to be a snowman. While Oda tries to make sense of what she's doing, Sada and Tadokoro already expect him to destroy the snowman to make her upset. However, Oda dismisses the idea, saying that doing something so simple would be lame. He breaks off an icicle and tells them he plans to put it on her neck to spook her instead. Tadokoro tells him that the plan is also lame, but Oba insists it's perfect if he can pull it off sneakily. Before he can act, he suddenly feels something cold hit his head. Kashiwata had already spotted them and thrown a snowball as a preemptive strike. When Oda asks what she's doing, Kashiwata explains that he looks suspicious holding the icicle, so she assumed he was going to stab her. He shouts that he wouldn't go that far, but then feels odd when he feels the snow seep under his clothes. Oda complains in discomfort since the ice is wet and cold. Kashiwata suddenly shakes, then runs off, prompting Oda to chase after her and throw a snowball of his own. She dodges easily, explaining that she can predict his throws based on his facial expressions. His friends are disappointed since Oda had been bragging earlier, but it's clear Kashiwata still has the upper hand. Then, Oda notices a large mound of snow behind her and grins as he comes up with an idea. He challenges her to a snowball fight, declaring that the loser will be the one who gets covered in snow. He believes he can make her fall into the mound by throwing snowballs she's meant to dodge. He smiles confidently, thinking his plan is foolproof. But he pauses when he sees that Kashiwata is holding a huge chunk of actual ice instead of snow. For a moment, he worries she's figured out his plan and is preparing to fight back by threatening to throw something that could actually hurt him. He studies her face, but her expression gives nothing away. He notices the ice looks heavy and reasons with himself that even if she throws it, it probably won't reach him. Kashiwata throws the ice and it lands near Oda. He mocks her for the weak throw, only for a pile of snow from the trees to suddenly fall on him, completely covering him. Kashiwata plainly declares that she won, which infuriates Oda. He suddenly announces that he won't quit until she falls into the pile of snow behind her, giving away his plan when it was supposed to be a secret. However, instead of dodging backward like he expected, Kashiwata only ducks and moves to the side, never once stepping closer to the snow pile. Oda's friends watch in amusement as he keeps throwing snowballs at her before deciding to join in themselves, both siding with Kashiwata since it is clear that she is the winning team member. Oda is shocked that his friends start launching snowballs at him, and he finds it unfair. It becomes a 3 versus 1 battle. Oda can barely land a hit, while Kashiwata strikes him effortlessly. He's on the verge of exploding when a snowball from her hits him square in the face, sending his friends into laughter. He recovers and chases them around the area. They end up playing all afternoon. His friends manage to land hits of their own against Oda. As payback, Oda even makes a huge snowball, planning to bury Sada with it, but drops it on himself when Kashiwata hits him again. As his attacks focus on his friends, his eyes drift toward Kashiwata, preparing another snowball. A gentle smile forms on his face just before one of his friends pelts him again. As the boys laugh and play, Kashiwata allows a small smile to grace her own face, having fun in an afternoon she thought would be spent alone. One morning before class, students filter into the school. Kashiwata sits quietly in her classroom seat, lost in thought as she reminisces about the past. Her mind drifts back to kindergarten. Back then, Oda was a messy kid who loved to scare his classmates with things he found on the ground, like frogs. A teacher quickly spotted him, bullying the others, and scolded him while cleaning him up. She'd also asked if he was responsible for the grasshopper she found in her bag the day before. Oda refused to confess and immediately ran off to play when another kid called him over to join everyone outside for a game of tag. As he played, he noticed Kashiwata sitting alone by herself in the playroom. Still, he turned his attention back to his friends and continued playing. The children enjoyed themselves in the yard until their teacher called for their attention. She reminded them that they had forgotten to invite Kashiwata again. One of the girls complained that Kashiwata never smiled whenever they played together. They had assumed she didn't want to play with them and had never bothered to ask. Out of curiosity towards Kashiwata, Oda decided to head back to the classroom and launch his frog at her. It landed on her head, but Kashiwata remained unfazed. He tried to get her to admit that the frog was huge, but she only stared at him. Oda called her weird, saying that any other girl would have cried or screamed. Kashiwata bowed her head quickly. He screamed, startled to be pranked by her. Kashiwata calmly explained that since he had surprised her first, what she did was simply payback. Oda tried to deny being surprised, but Kashiwata could tell from his embarrassed expression that he really was. He then asked if she had been surprised because it didn't look like it. Kashiwata didn't answer, her gaze drifting toward their classmates playing outside. Oda realized then that she had always wanted to join them. He told her to just say what she wanted instead of keeping quiet. She'd only stared blankly, so Oda grabbed her hand and led her out to the playground. His friends were surprised to see him bring Kashiwata along, but Oda met her to speak. She quietly told them she wanted to play too. Instead of rejecting her, they welcomed her warmly. Kashiwata joined in their game of tag, her expression neutral but her energy lively. During lunch, she noticed Oda searching for something. It turned out he had lost his frog, so she decided to speak to him another time. That night, as Kashiwata lay in bed, she told herself she would thank Oda in the morning. But the next day, Oda was gone. Their teacher told the class that he had moved away and wouldn't be returning. Kashiwata felt heartbroken. Oda had been her first friend, and she had come to really like his straightforward attitude. Returning from her memories, Kashiwata glances toward Oda, finally noticing that he's already in school. She stares, wondering if he remembers her from back then. Oda catches her looking and becomes flustered, especially as Tadokoro starts teasing him about it. Quietly, Kashiwata confesses her feelings again, causing Oda's face to turn bright red before she hurriedly runs away. One day, Oda asks if Kashiwata can wink. She gives it a try, but clearly struggles to do it. Oda laughs, pleased that she can't. But when he tries to show off, he only closes both eyes, completely unaware that he can't wink either. The morning begins with students confessing their love. It's Valentine's Day, and the school quickly fills with excitement. Even Oda notices how lively everyone seems. Tadokoro comments that it's Valentine's Day, which only makes Oda irritated that everyone is so enthusiastic about it. Tadokoro admits that every year he hopes to receive at least one piece of chocolate from a girl, but he always ends up with only the one from his mother. Oda bluntly calls it sad, causing Tadokoro to complain that Oda has never received chocolates either. Both of them notice Sada arriving at his desk with his arms full of chocolates. They rush over, and Tadokoro is instantly amazed that one of his best friends is such a heartthrob. When Sada calmly asks how many they received, they're too embarrassed to admit they have 0. Sada picks up on it and offers them 1 chocolate. Tadokoro takes it. He then asks Sada why he doesn't look happy despite receiving so many. Sada simply says there isn't anyone he actually likes. Tadokoro realizes that it must feel different if you're hoping to get chocolate from someone special. He glances expectantly at Oda, aware of Oda's crush on Kashiwata. Oda avoids meeting his gaze, not wanting to give himself away. Kashiwata suddenly appears between them and greets them good morning. She then looks directly at Oda, making him uneasy. She asks Oda if he knows what day it is. Oda tries to pretend he has no idea that it's Valentine's Day, but ends up blurting that he doesn't want anything today. Kashiwata stares at him and asks what exactly he doesn't want. Realizing he slipped, he tells her to just forget it. At his surprise, she lets it go and walks to her desk. Oda is confused, but Sada says it was obviously about chocolates. Oda disagrees, insisting that Kashiwata is so unpredictable and airheaded that chocolates probably didn't even occur to her. Tadokoro scolds him for being too harsh. Kashiwata is still a girl, and she's likely just as excited as the other girls. He's sure she'll approach Oda later. Oda denies expecting anything. Later during break, Oda walks down the hall, trying not to look eager for Kashiwata to approach him. When she does, he struggles to hide the blush rising on his cheeks as she rummages through a bag to hand him something. He feels a wave of disappointment when it turns out to be just the eraser he dropped earlier. Kashiwata then tells him she has another thing for him. Oda feigns indifference again, even though he's excited at the thought of chocolates. His excitement drops when Kashiwata instead pulls out the class log for him to take, since he's on duty tomorrow. Oda finally snaps and tells her to stop pulling random items out of her bag because it makes him think each one is something important. Kashiwata ignores his complaints and says there's still one more thing she has to give him. She rummages through the bag, then stops and simply stares inside. Lowering the bag, she tells him she no longer has anything left to give. She walks off, leaving Oda confused and disappointed. Meanwhile, Kashiwata returns to the classroom and calmly approaches Oda's desk. She carefully takes out a brightly colored paper bag and hangs it on the desk bag hook. When Oda reaches his desk, he notices the present. Tadokoro gets excited, betting it's chocolates, but Oda tells him to shut up while pretending not to care. With the bag in hand, he quickly leaves the room. He heads to a quiet part of the school and opens the bag. Inside are 2 wrapped chocolate bars. Realizing he was given Valentine's chocolates, his face immediately goes red. He wonders if they're from Kashiwata, unaware that she's watching him from nearby. One bright morning, Oniwara hands out the test scores from the previous day's exam. Kashiwata gives her usual blank expression, while Oda's eyes widen in shock at his own score. Tamuchi, meanwhile, lights up with a smile since she earned perfect marks. Oniwara returns to the front and encourages everyone to continue studying for future exams. Tamuchi shyly asks if Kashiwata would like to study with her in the library, hoping to help her improve her grades. After a quiet pause, Kashiwata agrees and Tabuchi quietly celebrates. For the first time, she feels her efforts as president of the Kashiwata fan club are paying off. Before their current friendship, she had spent the past 2 years simply observing and admiring Kashiwata from a safe distance. Her good mood continues throughout the day. As she and Kashiwata walk to the library, Tabuchi convinces herself that Oda and his friends won't bother them since they're the type who never want to study. But when she opens the library door, the first people she sees are Oda's group staring back at her with various expressions. Her good mood immediately slips away. She demands to know why they're in the library, and Oda angrily explains that he can't keep failing every exam. Tabuchi returns to Kashiwata, trying to think of a way for the two of them to study without distractions. She suggests finding another table, but Kashiwata points out that there aren't any free seats left. Tabuchi checks the room. Sure enough, every other table is occupied. With no other choice, they return to Oda's group and quietly sit at the same table. The placement makes her secretly happy, but Tabuchi fumes at how close they are. Suspicious, Tabuchi silently vows to keep an eye on Ota in case he tries anything that might bother Kashiwata. The study session begins, and Tabuchi notices how unusually quiet the table is. The boys have serious expressions, giving the impression they're actually studying. But when she glances at their materials, she realizes they've been playing cards the entire time. She also notices Kashiwata has a hand of cards of her own. Kashiwata defends herself, explaining that the boys invited her. Tabuchi feels a little left out since she was the only one not invited to play. She denies it when asked and tries to refocus on her studies. Oda ignores her and announces that the next game will be sevens. He shuffles the deck and deals the cards. Despite trying to focus, Tabuchi keeps getting distracted by their chatter. At one point, Oda gets frustrated when the last person to play a card ends up blocking him. Tadokoro notices that Tabuchi is trying to hide how much she wants to join the game. She keeps whispering suggestions for which cards Tadokoro should play, which makes him smile since her advice is helping him win. Oda eventually catches on and tells Tabuchi to just admit she wants to play and join them. Tabuchi refuses, insisting she only wants to make sure they don't do anything that might trouble Kashiwada. She also reminds them that they were supposed to be studying. Oda calls her a killjoy, saying she's always mad. The comment hits her harder than he expects. Hurt, Tabuchi tells them she doesn't mean to always be angry, then leaves the table to cool off. Sada quietly notes that Oda went too far. Tabuchi goes to the restroom and scolds herself for constantly being upset. She knows it's not cute for a girl to be angry all the time, and she wishes she could be more honest with her feelings like Kashiwada. She doesn't realize Kashiwada has followed her out of worry. As Tabuchi's emotions rise again, she's startled when Kashiwada calls her name. Kashiwada tells her that she has always found Tabuchi cute just as she is and that she doesn't need to change. Tabuchi is shocked at how easily Kashiwada seems to read her, and she also feels guilty for venting her frustrations to her. She continues complaining about other flaws in her personality, and Kashiwada calmly points out that Oda is the same way. The comparison doesn't comfort Tabuchi, but Kashiwada gently encourages her to return to the library. Tabuchi hesitates, but as they approach the library door, they overhear the boys talking about her. Tadokoro admits that he didn't like Tabuchi at first, but after getting to know her, he finds her interesting and thinks she has a charm similar to Oda's. Sada agrees with him. She finally walks in and the boys look up at her. She nervously offers to help them if there's anything in their studies they don't understand. The boys immediately realize this is her way of saying she feels better. Sada tries to hold back his chuckles, almost certain Tabuchi overheard them earlier. Tabuchi notices and instantly scolds him for laughing. Oda says she's finally participating with them, but Tabuchi insists that they all need to focus on studying. Despite this, the study session ends up being ineffective. All of them fail their exams except for Sada. When the bell rings, Oda decides to tease Tabuchi for failing alongside them. Tabuchi argues back that she only failed because she studied the wrong materials and begins tearing up. Tadokoro laughs and is surprised that even Sada failed, but Sada corrects him and calmly states that he passed and only 4 of them failed. During White Day, the school is filled with the same excitement as Valentine's Day. Kashiwada notices this as she walks to her classroom, but before she can enter, Oda stops her. He loudly declares that he has nothing for her this White Day. Instead of looking offended or disappointed, Kashiwada simply stares at him with her usual blank expression, which unnerves him. Thinking he needs to switch tactics, Oda rummages through a plastic bag and hands her a small container. When she looks inside, she sees 3 large larvae. Even without reacting, Kashiwada continues to stare, prompting Oda to hand her a giant isopod next. Her body begins to tremble from fear, but Oda thinks she's shaking with silent laughter and becomes impressed that even these bugs don't make her flinch. Realizing he needs a stronger surprise, he thinks back to the day he visited his sister's room. His sister owns many bizarre items, so he went to her hoping to borrow something to prank Kashiwada. His sister, however, misunderstood and assumed he wanted to give Kashiwada a nice White Day surprise. She insisted she already knew the chocolates from Valentine's Day made him happy. Oda denied this and regretted coming to her in the first place, but still asked for something gross. His sister suddenly got an idea and instructed him not to open her item until he gave it to Kashiwada. Oda assumed it contained something stinky, but the way she shook with excitement made him feel confident it would be a huge surprise. Now back at school, Oda hands Kashiwada the green box, not knowing what's inside. He confidently tells her it will surprise her more than the bugs. Kashiwada opens it, falls silent, and stares. Curious, Oda peeks inside and sees a handwritten love confession addressed to Kashiwada. Horrified, he snatches it back, insisting it's not what it looks like. Kashiwada admits it really is surprising. Thinking she's mocking him, he becomes even more flustered. In his panic to hide the note, it accidentally hits Oniwarada in the face. Oniwarada reads it and assumes the confession is directed at him, and politely turns Oda down on the spot. Oda becomes mortified as he tries to explain to Kashiwada that the note was from his sister, meant to tease him. Kashiwada, who had been trembling with giddy excitement earlier, suddenly goes still with disappointment. She then asks if he has anything else and notices something in his pocket. He tries to back away, denying he has another present, but accidentally admits he bought candy for her. Under Kashiwada's stare, he finally hands her the cider mochi and quickly walks off. Sada and Tadokoro later see Kashiwada in the hall carrying the items, which they assume are White Day gifts from Ota. They laugh that he gave her cheap candy, though Sada notes it actually tastes good despite the price. Kashiwada allows a small smile to appear on her face. Later at home, Kashiwada's brother comes in to feed their hamster and is horrified to see her eating the larvae. Kashiwada calmly explains that the bugs are actually chocolates shaped